And welcome back, our dear viewers. A very important participation by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi in the EU informal summit that took place in Nicosia, Cyprus. To shed more light on the importance of Egypt's participation in the summit and the importance of such a summit in the critical circumstances taking place in the region and on the international fronts as well, we are very much delighted to be joined over the phone by Ms. Monica William, our international relations expert. Dr. William, good morning.
Good morning.
A very important meeting took place yesterday in Nicosia, Cyprus, with the participation of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi with many Arab and European leaders. How does Egypt's participation solidify the strategic partnership with the EU states?
Of course, practically Egypt translates its vision into a multilateral diplomatic strategy. Its mediation Gaza remains a central example where Egypt works to sustain ceasefire and facilitate humanitarian access and to prevent escalation. However, the engagement is not just limited to reactive crisis management, but it reflects a broader policy of proactive management and diplomacy, which aims to contain conflict before they spill over into wider regional instabilities. And of course, this approach is practically relevant to a geopolitical environment where localized conflict, which can rapidly acquire transnational dimension. At the core of Egypt's approach lies a fundamental rejection of purely military solutions to regional conflicts, and it's very clear where the President Fattah el-Sisi works, or we can tackle this President Fattah el-Sisi statement. Egypt consistently frames instability not just as a product of isolated security breakdown, but as a cumulative result of a structural vulnerability, which of course can classified as political fragmentation, economic privacy, or external intervention. So this respective position Egypt as a prominent of conflict management, so political inclusion and the state reconstruction, and of course Egypt doctrine aligns with broader shift in international thinking, international efforts that increase acknowledge the limit of force in resolving this regional or such regional crisis.
Indeed. Doctor, how did this participation upon an invitation from Cypriot President Nikos Christodoulidis reflect Egypt's stance as regional heavyweight and powerhouse in the region? And we have seen also yesterday the speeches by the President of the EU Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and Antonio Costa, the President of the EU as well, hailing and of course the speech by the Cypriot President, hailing the great efforts exerted by Egypt in order to mediate, in order to diffuse the tense situation in the region. So how do you evaluate the situation?
Let's assume that from a European perspective or from Arab perspective, Egypt is increasingly viewed as a stabilizing actor in a volatile region. Its ability to maintain open communication channels with multiple stakeholders include, of course, actors that don't directly engage with one another, as we see Hamas and Israel, and nowadays there is a lot of hidden or indirect channels between Egypt and Iran and the United States to facilitate the communication between these these communications or coordinations to ceasefire enhance its stability as a mediator. So the diplomatic flexibility isn't easily or just a diplomatic move. It's rooted in Egypt's geographic position, historical experience, and policy of balanced relations. As a result, European actors see coordination with Cairo not just optional but essential for managing regional spillovers, and we can build on that strategic partnership or strategic framework which is last or held in Europe last year, and it's very important. On the other side, energy security reinforces Egypt's strategic importance. Europe seeks to diversify its energy sources in the subsequent or the escalation in state of warmers and global disruption. So the alternative has emerged as critical within this context, and Egypt's infrastructure, particularly its LNG facilities, its role of regional gas position. Of course, Egypt as a key partner in this figure. And Egypt firstly balanced its call for this creation with the imperative of securing vital maritime routes and energy coordination. So, viewing this objective as contradictory and firm stability as the main and essential and main point for safeguard economic and strategic interests.
Yes. Dr. William, of course, the summit took place amid the regional crises and international crises, as well as we are having, of course, the repercussions and the strong implications on the economic level due to the Iranian war and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, as well as, of course, the extension of the Ukrainian war. So how did you see the outcome and the statements that were released yesterday by the world leaders and EU leaders, and as well as, of course, the Arab leaders, concerning the situation and how they are having common vision on the importance of finding diplomatic and dialogue as a priority in order to find a way out of these crises?
Of course, as you mentioned, it's the summit creating a competition evolving in Iran from one side and the Ukrainian crisis on the other side, and it's very important for stakeholders to convene and to tackle first. And for most, the Iran-related escalation introduced a high level of uncertainty into global energy markets and, of course, a global economy as well. So given the centrality of the Gulf region to and gas supplies, any military, of course, the threat to maritime routes and particularly in checkpoints such as Strait of Hormuz, as we said. So rising energy prices, disrupted supply chain, increasing insurance costs for maritime all contribute to broader inflation wave affecting Europe and Middle East economies. And of course, the stakeholders, especially for instance, in this context, the summit serves as a coordinated platform to mitigate this economic shocks or enhance cooperation on energy security and diversification strategies. On the other side, important summit is equally significant, but multi-dimensional. Economically, Egypt and Arab countries faces indirect and tangible repercussions from regional instability, including the fluctuations in energy market pressure on foreign currency inflows and potential disruption even to public mandate.
Of course.
So, of course, politically, however, the crisis creates opportunity for another country to reinforce the collaboration and participate actively in such high-level meetings to try to find a solution or alternative solution. And it reflects, of course, a broader recognition that economic stability and geopolitical stability are deeply interconnected. The war involving Iran isn't accounting to the capital side, but it's related to supply chain in the global markets.
Indeed, Dr. Monica William, International Relations Expert, thank you so much for your precious input. Always a pleasure, and have a